I really like dressing up. I really like making these weird characters. It was my thing. It's the thing that I do that makes me feel the most like myself and the most capable. I feel extremely lucky that I've managed to turn it into some kind of career. My name is Melita Curphy and I'm a professional artist. I do mask making, I sculpt, I do illustration and character design. I spent a lot of time as a kid watching horror movies, stuff like Aliens, Predator, and I wanted to do creature design for a long time for the movies. But I also wanted to do comics, I also wanted to do children's book illustration, I want to be an animator, so I want to do all these different things. Mostly I want to tell stories about monsters, I want to have these characters in my head come out, put parts of myself into them. Yeah, I just want to make cool monsters. I would consider myself more of a sculptor now, for sure. Went to school for animation and illustration, but I think that there's so much more for me to explore with sculpting. I get a lot more pleasure out of sculpting. I like having the thing in my hands. I like this tangible object, piece of art. And I think with illustration, I've sort of reached as far as I can go. Like, I'm okay at it, but I'm not great. I've been sculpting since I was pretty young, seriously about 20 years. I would say I learned the majority of my sculpting skills actually being online. Being on internet forums, like the Shiflett Brothers sculpting forum was a huge help back in the day when I first got online. Talking to other sculptors, having people critique my work, and picking up little tips and tricks from them was just invaluable. My favorite clay of all is monster clay. I started using it many years ago, like when it first came out, and that really changed the way that I sculpt. I sculpted in Super Sculpey before that, but something about the way monster clay felt to me just felt right. But because I use monster clay, I also had to learn how to do casting because monster clay is not permanent. So I learned how to do silicone molds and urethane casts. For my tools, I use Ken's tools for my sculpting tools. AMC Creatures makes some great tools, like Kemper tools. When I first started making the 1/6 scale stuff, I would make these little characters and dress them up, but then I also made full-size versions of them too, where I can dress up. I like doing the costumes because I love seeing people's reaction to it and they get really excited. And I also like making pieces that I can sell as blanks and then watch other people tell their own stories with it, and you're kind of sharing these worlds with each other. And then toys, the 1/6 stuff I do because I just really like toys. I like having the thing in my hand. I like these little pieces of art, these little sculpture pieces that can move and bend and you can touch and pose. You know, to me that's art. And engineering, I like collecting all the little bits to put on it. I like making the little outfits and weathering them. And I even started making dioramas last year for them, which is really fun. I collect anywhere from like Hot Toys to really obscure 1/6 brands put out by like individual artists. Like Black 13 Park is really cool. They make some amazing stuff. I really got into the Predator series by Hot Toys. I've also got a lot of robot toys, some Japanese vinyl, art dolls, a number of those from like artists that make like one-offs. It's amazing what they can do. The crown jewel of my collection, I would say, is probably the Samurai Predator by Takeya that he designed a few years ago. I love that thing. It's my favorite thing that I own. That and the 3A Titanfall 2 figures. They're my babies, got 2 of them, and they're awesome. Let's not wish this, but everything else burned down to my house. If I had those 3 pieces preserved, I would be happy. I've been influenced by comic books and cartoons, various media. A lot of Japanese artists have been a huge influence in my work. Even traditional art from different cultures has been a big influence, but I mean, it can come from anywhere, really. Like sometimes I'll see a color, an image will just pop in my head and I'll just want to make something with that color or color combination or shape. A lot of animals too are influences, you know, like the lizards and birds and creatures that I've had. They're great for reference and like scale textures or patterns, and yeah, influence comes from everywhere. I make work because it pays me. It's how I pay my rent. You know, you don't see a whole lot of my work around my house because I have to sell it. I can't afford to keep my work, literally. But there are periods where I want to make something that I can just lavish a lot of attention on and not have to worry about cutting it off at a certain number of hours that I've worked on it so that people can afford it. So every few months I'll do like a big project like the Crystal Demon Mask or the jacket that I made that's just for me, or Alpha over here. That's just something that I pour a lot of money and time into, just learning a new method, figuring out little problems that I can't do with, let's say, stuff that I'm going to produce 40 or 50 pieces of. And I do that because I like to see if I can do it. I want to see the thing in my head come out and be tangible, and the pleasure of just lavishing it with attention and not cutting any corners. You don't want to get to the point where you're making it perfect where you never finish it, but just really indulging yourself. It just feels really good. But at the same time, if I had the freedom to do that all the time, there is that slight motivation with being paid for what you do to be productive. 1/1 scale, like life size, as far as masks and helmets and stuff, I think that's my favorite thing to do because I really like being able to wear it. Like anything that I can put on and walk around in it, it's just really cool. And especially if you like a moving jaw and you can like act in it, it's weird when you put a mask on, seeing how people treat you differently and how you might start to kind of act differently because you're being treated different. It's just this kind of neat interaction you can have with people. But I also like 1/6 scale a lot because the accessories are pretty easy to find. Like the G.I. Joe bodies are easy to find. It's easy to kit bash stuff with 1/6. I know the 1/12 thing is a big thing now, but that's just a little too small for me. So the 1/6 is just the right size of tininess without putting on your microscope and trying to sculpt that. My resin figures and all the weird little guys that I make, they're not really in scale. I just make them small enough so they fit in my pressure pot. The Alpha figure, it's got a special meaning to me because the story behind him is I was hired to design some bounty hunters for a show called 3 Below, and I was asked by Guillermo del Toro to do it, and it was really cool working with him. He was super nice, and it was a huge honor to do that. When the show came out, I decided to make my own figure of him just for myself and make it as cool as I possibly could, make him like kind of realistic and gritty. So I spent several months working on him, and there were points in the project where I was like, this is gonna look really stupid, like it's out of scale, his head's too big, blah, blah, blah. I sculpted the parts separately, but once I put it all together, I was like, holy shit, like he looks really cool. And I started adding the clothing and I started adding armor. And then when I did all the final sewing and you know, sewing on his pauldrons and like all the final painting and staining, I was like, I did it. I did it. He looks awesome. And so he is my pride and joy right now. My parents have always been really supportive. They've been always very behind my art. There's been times where I think some of the stuff I was making was a little scary to them because, you know, it's monsters. But once they saw the monsters that I was making, they weren't malicious. There wasn't anything wrong with me. Like, they really like my art now. My mom's my biggest fan. You know, I told her I was working on the show. She was thrilled, and she's always looking at my Facebook and commenting or something, and they own a lot of my art. And my friends love it. Most of my friends are creative people. It's really nice to get together and talk shop with them because we all have the same issues, we all have the same hang-ups and insecurities, so it's really good to get a good community of artists around you. I'm really glad to have a partner who really gets it. Yes, Steve is creative also. He does cosplay stuff, he does special effects makeup, he's an engineer, he's got the A-brain. So there's some things that I can't figure out that he can immediately go, oh, this is your problem, here's how to solve it. Every year I am at Monsterpalooza in April. I think this year they're moving it to May. I do sell my work, and people can find my work on my online store at missmonster.shopify.com. You can find me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and my main portfolio website is missmonster.com. I do have a Patreon. It's patreon.com/missmonster, and on there I have a number of tutorials, step-by-step things. I've got sneak peeks. If you join as low as $1, you can get access to products that I might not put up publicly. There's also a tier where you can ask me questions, I'll critique your work. A lot of paint tutorials, a lot of sculpting tutorials, molding and casting, there's a lot of stuff. My advice for aspiring artists would be, don't stop doing what you're doing even if it's not your full-time job. Just keep doing it, because that little thing can keep you sane sometimes. That's how you express yourself, that's you. Practice, pay attention, be inspired. Don't push yourself to a breaking point either, rest. Find people who are like you, find your tribe, because they are so important. If I didn't have some of my buddies, like my convention buddies, some of my best friends, people that I've worked with, to say, oh man, you know, I had this issue, and they're like, oh, I had the same thing, I solved it that way, and you're like, oh, I'm not just dumb, it's just a thing, or I'm not feeling this way right now. Oh, I feel the same way sometimes. Just comparing notes and not feeling like you're doing something wrong or you're bad because you made a mistake, or that it's so important. I guess another piece of advice I would say is just be nice. Be nice to your fans. Just be kind to people online. I don't know where I'm going with that. Don't be a dick.